What this woman discovered on her father's old card made the entire bank go into complete lockdown. The manager's hands were shaking. Security was called. And when she finally saw what was on that screen, she collapsed right there in the lobby. But here's the crazy part. This all started because her husband threw her out like yesterday's garbage. You're going to want to stick around for this one because the ending, it's going to hit you right in the heart. Let me tell you about Emma. Emma was 34 years old, and for the last 12 years of her life, she thought she had it all figured out. Nice house in the suburbs of Chicago, to cars in the driveway. A husband named David who worked in finance. From the outside looking in, everyone thought Emma was living the dream. Her neighbors would wave at her when she pulled into the driveway. Her co-workers at the small marketing firm where she worked would always say things like, "You're so lucky, Emma. David seems like such a catch." And Emma, she believed it. But here's the thing about pretty houses and nice cars and husbands who wear expensive suits. Sometimes they're just a really good disguise for something ugly underneath. Emma met David when she was 22. Fresh out of college, bright-eyed, full of hope. Her father, a quiet man named William, had just passed away 6 months before. Cancer took him faster than anyone expected. One day he was there, teaching Emma how to change a tire in the driveway, and the next, he was just gone. William wasn't a rich man. At least that's what Emma always thought. He worked as a mechanic his whole life, owned a small auto shop on the south side of Chicago. Nothing fancy, just honest work, crease under his fingernails, tired eyes at the end of the day, but always a smile for his little girl. When William died, he left Emma 3 things. The first was his old pickup truck, which barely ran anymore. The second was a handwritten letter that Emma couldn't bring herself to open for years, because just seeing her father's handwriting made her cry. And the third, a single bank card, old worn, the numbers almost faded from years of sitting in his wallet. "Keep this safe, sweetheart," William had told her once, years before he got sick. "It's not much, but it's something. It's for a rainy day. You never know when the storm's going to come." Emma had nodded, not really understanding what he meant. She tucked the card away in a small lockbox with some old photos and her birth certificate. And then she forgot about it. Life moved on. She met David. They got married, and that little card from her father, it just sat there, collecting dust. Waiting for the storm. The storm came on a Tuesday. Emma remembers it was Tuesday because that was the day she always did laundry. She was folding David's shirts, the expensive ones, the ones he insisted had to be air-dried when her phone buzzed. It was a text from her friend Olivia. "Hey girl, you okay? Just saw David at Rosario's with some blonde. Looked pretty cozy. Maybe it's work stuff. Just wanted you to know. Love you." Emma read that text 7 times. She told herself it was nothing. David had lots of meetings, business dinners, clients to schmooze. That's what he always said. But something about the way Olivia phrased it, pretty cozy, made Emma's stomach flip. She tried to push it out of her mind, finished the laundry, made dinner, waited for David to come home. He didn't get home until almost midnight. "Work thing," he said, not even looking at her. "You know how it is." Emma nodded. But she didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. Over the next few weeks, Emma started noticing things. Little things at first. David was more protective of his phone than usual. He'd take calls in the other room. He started working late, 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week. And when Emma would try to talk to him, really talk to him, he'd get irritated. Snap at her. Tell her she was being paranoid. "You're always so insecure, Emma," he said one night, rolling his eyes. "It's exhausting." And Emma, who had spent 12 years trying to be the perfect wife, who had put her own dreams on hold to support David's career, who had smiled through every holiday dinner with his awful mother, Emma, started to believe him. Maybe she was paranoid. Maybe she was the problem. But then came the credit card statement. It arrived on a Saturday morning. David was out golfing with clients, he said, and Emma was cleaning out the home office when she found it. An envelope already opened, stuffed behind some old files. She shouldn't have looked. She knew she shouldn't have looked, but she did. The statement was from a credit card Emma didn't even know existed, and on it, charges from jewelry stores. Fancy restaurants David never took her to. Hotel rooms. Weekend spa packages for 2.2.mos. Hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold the paper. Her vision blurred with tears. 12 years. 12 years of her life, and this is what it came down to. A secret credit card and hotel rooms she'd never seen. She confronted David that night. She thought maybe there'd be an explanation. Maybe he'd beg for forgiveness. Maybe he'd get down on his knees and tell her it was a mistake. That he loved her, that they could work through it. That's not what happened. David didn't even flinch. He looked at Emma like she was a stranger, like she was an inconvenience. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "It's what? You think I was going to stay with you forever? Look at yourself, Emma. You're not exactly what you used to be." Emma felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Want a divorce?" David continued, his voice cold as ice. "And I want you out of this house by the end of the month. My lawyer says I shouldn't have any problem keeping everything since I'm the primary earner. But hey, don't worry. I'll let you keep your sad little car." Emma couldn't even respond. She just stood there, frozen as the life she thought she had crumbled around her like a sandcastle in a hurricane. The next 3 weeks were the worst of Emma's life. David moved fast, real fast. Turns out he'd been planning this for months, had his lawyer ready, had all their assets tied up in ways Emma didn't even understand. Because here's the dirty little secret: nobody tells you about divorce if one person has all the money and all the lawyers. The other person doesn't stand a chance. Emma tried to fight it. She hired a lawyer, a cheap one, because that's all she could afford, but every time they made progress, David's team would hit back harder. They dragged things out, made everything complicated. And the whole time, Emma was bleeding money she didn't have. Her friends tried to help. Olivia let her crash on her couch. Another friend, Sophia, lent her some cash to cover groceries. But Emma could see it in their eyes, that look of pity mixed with exhaustion. Nobody wants to be around someone whose life is falling apart. It's too depressing, too real by the end of the month. Emma had nothing. David got the house. David got the cars. David got everything they'd built together over 12 years. And Emma. Emma got a suitcase full of clothes, $200. In her checking account and a stack of legal bills she couldn't pay. She was 34 years old. She was starting from zero. It was Olivia who reminded her about the card. They were sitting in Olivia's cramped apartment, eating instant ramen because that's all Emma could afford, when Olivia said something that changed everything. "Hey, what about that card your dad left you? The one you always talked about?" Emma looked up, confused. "What card, you know? From your dad. You told me about it years ago. Said he left you some kind of emergency card or something?" Emma had completely forgotten about it. 12 years of marriage, and she'd never once thought about that old card sitting in her lockbox. She'd never needed it. David had always taken care of the money. But now, Emma went to the storage unit where she'd been keeping her stuff. It took her almost an hour to find the lockbox. Buried under old photo albums and boxes of stuff she couldn't bring herself to throw away. But finally, there it was. She opened the lockbox with shaking hands. Inside, just like she remembered, was the old card her father had given her. It was so worn she could barely read the numbers. The bank logo was one she didn't recognize. First Heritage Mutual, some small bank she'd never heard of. Probably local. It's probably barely had any money in it. But at this point, what did she have to lose? Emma also found her father's letter, the one she'd never opened. It was still sealed, her name written on the front in her father's familiar handwriting. She wasn't ready to read it yet. Not now, maybe not ever. She tucked it back in the box and grabbed the card. "I'm gonna go to the bank tomorrow," she told Olivia. "See if there's anything left in this account." "Worth a shot," Olivia said, shrugging. Maybe there's like $50 or something. Emma laughed bitterly. $50 would be more than I've got right now. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept turning the old card over in her hands, running her fingers over the faded numbers, thinking about her father. William had always been a simple man. He never made much money, never talked about finances, so whatever was on this card, it probably wasn't much. But still, there was something about the way he'd said it. For a rainy day. You never know when the storm's gonna come. Well, the storm had definitely come. And Emma was drowning. The next morning, Emma got up early. She put on the nicest clothes she had left, a pair of black pants and a blouse that was only slightly wrinkled. She wanted to look presentable. She didn't want the bank people to look at her and see what she really was, a broke, divorced woman with nothing to her name. She looked up First Heritage Mutual on her phone. Turns out it was a small bank downtown. One of those old-school places that had been around forever. The kind of bank her father would have liked. No fancy apps or complicated stuff. Just people you could talk to face to face. Emma took 2 buses to get there. The ride was long, and with every passing block, she felt her anxiety growing. What if the account was closed? What if there was nothing in it? What if this whole trip was just another dead end? When she finally got to the bank, she stood outside for a good 5 minutes, just staring at the building. It was old but well-maintained. Stone columns out front, big brass doors. The kind of place that looked like it had been there for 100 years. "Okay?" Emma whispered to herself. "Let's do this." She pushed through the heavy doors and stepped inside. The lobby was quiet. Marble floors, high ceilings, the kind of hushed atmosphere you'd expect from an old bank. There were only a few customers inside, an elderly couple at one window, a young guy in a suit at another. Emma walked up to the main counter, where a young woman with a bright smile was waiting. "Hi there. Welcome to First Heritage Mutual. How can I help you today?" Emma pulled out the old card. "Hi, I'm trying to check on an account. This card belonged to my father. He passed away a while ago, and I just ... I wanted to see if there's anything still in it." The woman nodded sympathetically. "Of course. I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me just take a look here." She took the card from Emma and examined it, her brow furrowing slightly. Wow, this is an old one. I don't think I've seen this type of card in years. Let me enter the number and see what comes up." Emma waited, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment of truth. The woman typed in the numbers, clicked a few things, waited, then her face went pale, like seriously pale, like she'd just seen a ghost. "Ma'am," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Could you excuse me for just one moment?" Before Emma could respond, the woman practically ran to the back of the bank. Emma stood there, confused, watching as the woman disappeared behind a frosted glass door marked Manager. What the heck was going on? Emma looked around nervously. The other customers didn't seem to notice anything weird. But Emma's heart was racing now. Had she done something wrong? Was the account flagged for something? Was she about to get arrested? A few minutes later, the frosted door opened. The young woman came back out, but this time she wasn't alone. She was followed by a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, clearly the manager, and another man who looked like security. Emma's blood ran cold. "Ma'am," the manager said, approaching her with a strange look on his face. "Could you please come with me to my office? There's something we need to discuss." "Right now?" Emma's legs felt like jelly. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?" The manager looked at the card in his hand, then back at Emma. His hands were actually shaking. "Ma'am," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Please, just come with me. You need to see this." Emma followed him on trembling legs. The security guard walked behind her, which did nothing to calm her nerves. They passed through the frosted door, down a long hallway lined with old photographs, and into a large corner office. The manager gestured for Emma to sit down. She did, perching on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than everything she owned. "Ma'am," the manager said, sitting across from her, I'm James Mitchell, the senior manager here at First Heritage. Before we continue, I need to verify some information. Your father, was his name William Thomas Richardson? Emma nodded slowly. Yes, that was my dad. The manager let out a long breath. And this card, he gave it to you personally. Yes, years ago. He said it was for emergencies. James Mitchell leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples like he had a massive headache. Ma'am, he said finally, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but your father was one of our original account holders. He's been with us since 1962. And this account, he turned his computer monitor around, so Emma could see the screen. Emma looked, then she looked again. Then she stopped breathing because there, on the screen, was a number. A number so big it didn't even look real. A number with so many zeros that Emma's brain couldn't process it. That's not possible, she whispered. James Mitchell nodded slowly. I had the same reaction, ma'am. But I assure you it's very real. Your father was a very, very careful man. And this account has been growing untouched for over 60 years. Emma stared at the screen. The number stared back. And for the first time in months, Emma felt something she thought she'd never feel again. Hope. Emma couldn't stop staring at the screen. Her eyes kept scanning the number over and over again, like if she looked away for even a second, it would disappear. Like it was a dream she was about to wake up from. $47 million. $40-7 million and some change. Her father, William Richardson. The mechanic with grease-stained hands and a beat-up pickup truck. The man who clipped coupons and reused plastic bags. The man who told Emma they couldn't afford the fancy ice cream, so they always got the store brand. That man had $47 million sitting in a bank. Count this whole time. I don't understand. Emma finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. This has to be a mistake. My dad wasn't rich. He was a mechanic. He owned a little auto shop. He drove a truck that was older than me. James Mitchell, the bank manager, leaned forward in his chair. His hands were still trembling slightly, and Emma noticed there was sweat on his forehead. This was clearly not a normal Tuesday for him either. Ma'am? Emma. May I call you Emma? He waited for her to nod before continuing. Emma, I understand your confusion. I really do. When my team pulled up this account, we thought it was a glitch at first. We ran it 3 times. I personally called our corporate office to verify. This is real. This is very, very real. Emma shook her head slowly. But how? How is this possible? James took a deep breath. Your father opened this account in 1962. He was just 18 years old at the time. He made an initial deposit of $5,000, which back then was a significant amount of money. But here's the thing, Emma. Your father never touched it. Not once. For over 60 years, this account has been earning interest. Compound interest. And because of the specific type of account, he opened a legacy trust account with reinvested dividends. The growth was, well, exponential. Emma's head was spinning. But where did he get $5,000 when he was 18? My dad grew up poor. His family had nothing. James nodded. I can only tell you what's in our records. According to the original documentation, your father listed the source of funds as an inheritance from his grandmother. There's a note here that says, and I'm quoting directly, for my future family. To be kept until needed for my future family. Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her father had been thinking about her before she was even born, before he even met her mother. He'd been planning, saving, protecting, all for a future he couldn't even see yet. There's more, James said gently. Your father set up very specific instructions for this account. He came in personally about 10 years ago to update the paperwork. He named you as the sole beneficiary, and he left this. James reached into a folder on his desk and pulled out an envelope. It was old, slightly yellowed, but Emma recognized the handwriting immediately. It was her father's. He asked us to keep this with the account records, James explained. He said if you ever came in, we were supposed to give it to you personally. Emma reached out with shaking hands and took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in her father's familiar scrawl. For my Emma Bear. Emma Bear. That's what he used to call her when she was little. She hadn't heard that name in years. The tears started falling now. She couldn't stop them. Didn't even try. I'll give you a moment, James said softly. Take your time, and Emma. Congratulations. Your father was clearly an extraordinary man. He stepped out of the office. Closing the door gently behind him, Emma sat there in that fancy leather chair, holding an envelope that contained words from a man who'd been gone for over a decade. Her hands were shaking so badly she wasn't sure she could even open it, but she had to. She had to know. Slowly, carefully, she slid her finger under the seal and pulled out the letter inside. It was handwritten on plain notebook paper, the same kind her dad used to use for grocery lists and repair estimates at the shop. My dearest Emma Bear, the letter began. If you're reading this, then you finally used the card. I always wondered when that day would come. I hope it's because something wonderful happened. Maybe you're buying your first house, or starting a business, or taking that trip to Paris you always talked about when you were little. But knowing life, I'm guessing it's probably not something wonderful. I'm guessing you're reading this because something went wrong, because you hit a rough patch, because the storm finally came. And that's okay, sweetheart. That's what this was always for. You're probably wondering how your old man ended up with all this money. The truth is, I got lucky once. Just once. When I was 18, my grandmother passed away. She was a tough old lady. You never got to meet her, but you would have liked her. She didn't have much, but she left me $5,000. Said I should do something smart with it. Now, I could have bought a car, could have blown it on something stupid. But I remembered something my grandmother always said. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So I planted a tree, Emma. I put that money in the bank in a special account that would just keep growing. And I made myself a promise I would never touch it, no matter what. It wasn't for me. It was for whoever came after me. And then you came along, and suddenly that money had a purpose. It was for you, for your future, for whatever you needed, whenever you needed it. I know I wasn't a perfect father. I worked too much. I missed some of your school plays. I didn't always know how to talk about feelings and all that stuff. But I loved you, Emma Bear, more than anything in this whole world. You were my greatest achievement. Not the shop, not any amount of money. So here's what I want you to do with this money. First, take care of yourself. Whatever trouble you're in, get out of it. You don't owe anyone anything. Second, don't let anyone make you feel small. You're a Richardson. We don't break. Third, live your life. Really live it. Do the things you were always afraid to do. Take the chances you were always afraid to take. And fourth, and this is the most important one, be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you, sweetheart. Just be happy. I wish I could be there to see what you do next. But even though I'm gone, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. And nothing, not time, not death, not anything will ever change that. I love you forever and always. Dad P.S. If anyone ever makes you feel like you're not enough, you send them to me. I'll be waiting. Emma completely broke down. She sat in that fancy office and sobbed like she hadn't sobbed since the day her father died. All those years of grief she'd pushed down. All those tears she'd refused to cry. All that pain she'd been carrying, it all came flooding out at once. Her dad. Her wonderful, amazing, incredible dad. He'd been looking out for her this whole time. Even from beyond the grave, he was still protecting her. Still providing for her. Still telling her he loved her. And suddenly, all those years of thinking she wasn't enough. All those years of David making her feel small, making her feel worthless, making her feel like she was lucky he put up with her. It all seemed so ridiculous. She was a Richardson. And Richardsons don't break. There was a soft knock on the door. James poked his head in, his expression concerned. Emma, are you all right? Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and let out a shaky laugh. I'm okay. Actually, I think I'm better than I've been in a long time. James smiled warmly and stepped back into the office. I'm glad to hear that. Now, whenever you're ready, we have some paperwork to go over. There are some formalities involved in accessing the account, but I assure you, we'll make the process as smooth as possible. Over the next 2 hours, Emma learned more about banking and finance than she had in her entire life. James explained how the account worked, what the tax implications were, what steps she needed to take to access the funds. He was patient and thorough, never making her feel stupid for asking questions. By the time they were finished, Emma's head was spinning, but it was a good kind of spinning. A hopeful kind dot as she was getting ready to leave. James stopped her. Emma, if I may, I've been in banking for almost 30 years and I've seen a lot of things. People who come into money often don't handle it well. They make impulsive decisions. They trust the wrong people. They lose everything as fast as they got it. Emma nodded, listening carefully. Your father was one of the smartest financial minds I've ever encountered, and he never had any formal training. He just understood something that most people don't. Wealth isn't about how much you make. It's about how much you keep and how long you're willing to wait. James handed her his business card. I'd like to offer you our full private banking services. Complimentary, of course. We'll help you manage this money, invest it wisely, protect it. Your father trusted us for 60 years. I hope you'll consider doing the same. Emma took the card and smiled. Thank you, James. I'll definitely think about it. As she walked out of the bank, the late afternoon sun hit her face, and for the first time in months, Emma felt light, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, like the world was full of possibilities again. She had money now, real money, the kind of money that could change everything. But more important than the money was what her father had given her with that letter: permission to start over, permission to believe in herself again, permission to be happy. Emma's first call was to Olivia. Girl, where are you? Olivia practically screamed into the phone. You've been gone for like 5 hours. I was about to file a missing persons report. Emma laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in ages. Liv, you're never going to believe what happened. Can you meet me for coffee? I need to tell you something, and I need to tell you in person. You're scaring me. Is everything okay? Everything is. Actually, everything is amazing. I'll explain when I see you. 20 minutes later, Emma and Olivia were sitting in a coffee shop downtown. The same coffee shop where, just that morning, Emma couldn't even afford to buy herself a latte. Now she bought them both the fanciest drinks on the menu and left a $50 tip. Case spill? Olivia demanded. What is going on with you? You're glowing. Did you meet someone? Did you win the lottery? Emma took a deep breath. You know that card? My dad's card. Yeah, ... It had $47 million in it. Olivia's jaw dropped. Literally dropped. She looked like a cartoon character. I'm sorry, what? $47 million. My dad saved it his whole life. He never touched it. He left it all to me. Olivia stared at her for a long moment. Then she grabbed Emma's hands across the table. Emma? Are you serious right now? This isn't a joke. It's not a joke. I have the paperwork in my bag. I still can't believe it myself. Olivia let out a scream so loud that everyone in the coffee shop turned to look at them. She didn't care. She jumped up, ran around the table, and hugged Emma so tight that Emma could barely breathe. Oh my God. Oh my God, Emma. This is insane. You're rich. You're a millionaire. Oh my God, wait until David finds out. Oh, his face is going to be priceless. At the mention of David's name, Emma felt a familiar knot in her stomach. But then she remembered her father's words. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You know what? Emma said slowly. I don't even care what David thinks. He's not part of my life anymore. This isn't about him. This is about me. This is about starting over. Olivia nodded fiercely. You're absolutely right. Forget David. He's trash. He's less than trash. He's the stuff that trash throws away. Emma laughed. I love you, Liv. I love you too, girl. Now, let's talk about what you're going to do with all this money. First things first, we're getting you out of my cramped apartment and into a real place. Something fabulous. Something with like a bathtub that actually works. Over the next few weeks, Emma's life transformed in ways she never could have imagined. First, she paid off all her legal debts from the divorce. Every last cent. The lawyer who'd been sending her threatening letters about unpaid bills suddenly got very polite when Emma wrote him a check for the full amount. Next, she found herself an apartment. Not a fancy penthouse or anything crazy that wasn't her style. Just a nice, comfortable two-bedroom in a safe neighborhood. A place she could call her own. A place where no one could kick her out. She also did something she'd been wanting to do. For years, she quit her job at the marketing firm. Not because she had to work. She definitely didn't. But because she'd always hated that job. Her boss was terrible, the hours were long, and the work was soul-crushingly boring. But quitting wasn't enough. Emma wanted to do something meaningful with her life. Something that mattered. And that's when she had the idea. Her father's auto shop, the one he'd run for decades, had closed down after he died. Emma hadn't been able to keep it going, and eventually she'd had to sell the building. It had broken her heart at the time, but what if she could bring it back? Not the exact same shop that was gone, but something similar. Something that honored her father's legacy while also doing some good in the world. Emma started making plans. She researched locations in her father's old neighborhood. She talked to mechanics and business advisors. She started sketching out ideas for a shop that would not only fix cars, but also train young people who needed a second chance, kids aging out of foster care, veterans struggling to find work, people who just needed someone to believe in them. She was going to call it Richardson's Second Chances. But while Emma was busy building her new life, there was one more thing she needed to take care of. David. Now, Emma wasn't a vengeful person. She really wasn't. Her father had always taught her to be kind, to be fair, to take the high road whenever possible. But there's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. And Emma was done being a doormat. See, during the divorce, David had hidden assets. He'd lied to the court about his income. He'd manipulated the proceedings to make sure Emma walked away with almost nothing while he kept everything. And now, Emma had the resources to prove it. She hired a real lawyer this time. A good one. The kind of lawyer who charges $500 an hour and earns every penny. His name was Michael, and he looked like someone you definitely didn't want to mess with. Here's what we're going to do, Michael explained during their first meeting. We're going to reopen the divorce case. We're going to subpoena all of David's financial records, and we're going to prove that he committed fraud. Not only will you get back everything you're owed, but he could face criminal charges. Emma nodded slowly. I don't want to ruin his life. I just want what's fair. Michael raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Emma, this man tried to leave you homeless. He lied under oath. He took advantage of the system to hurt you. Fair isn't enough. He needs to face consequences. Emma thought about it. She thought about all those nights crying herself to sleep on Olivia's couch. She thought about counting pennies to afford ramen noodles. She thought about the way David had looked at her when he told her she wasn't what she used to be. "Okay," she said finally, "let's do it." The legal process took a few months, but when it was over, the results were devastating for David. Turns out, David hadn't just hidden assets from Emma, he'd been hiding them from the IRS too. Tax evasion, money laundering through his company, a whole web of financial crimes that unraveled the moment someone started pulling at the threads. David lost everything: his job, his reputation, his fancy house with the 3-car garage, even his new girlfriend, the blonde that Olivia had seen him with at the restaurant. Dumped him the moment she realized the money was gone. Last Emma heard, he was facing federal charges and looking at serious prison time. Emma didn't celebrate. That wasn't who she was. But she did feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Justice. 6. Months after Emma discovered her father's secret fortune, she stood in front of a building on the south side of Chicago with tears in her eyes. But these weren't sad tears, not even close. These were the happiest tears she'd ever cried. The building in front of her was nothing fancy. It was an old warehouse that had been abandoned for years, graffiti on the walls, weeds growing through the cracks in the parking lot, windows so dirty you couldn't see through them. Most people would have looked at it and seen a lost cause. But Emma saw a possibility. This was going to be Richardson's second chances. It had taken months of planning, hundreds of meetings, and more paperwork than Emma ever thought possible. But finally, it was happening. The construction crews were arriving next week. The renovation plans were approved. The nonprofit paperwork was filed. Her father's dream. Her dream was becoming reality. "You okay, boss?" Emma turned to see Olivia walking up behind her, 2 coffees in hand. Over the past few months, Olivia had become more than just Emma's best friend. She'd become her business partner. When Emma first told her about the idea for the auto shop and training program, Olivia had quit her job on the spot. "Are you crazy?" Emma had said. "You can't just quit your job." "Watch me," Olivia had replied. "You're gonna need someone to handle the business side of things while you're out there changing lives. And besides, I've always wanted to do something that actually mattered. This is my chance too." Now here they were, standing in front of their future. "I'm better than okay," Emma said, taking one of the coffees. I don't even have words for what I'm feeling right now." Olivia smiled and linked her arm through Emma's. "Your dad would be so proud, you know? So incredibly proud." Emma nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I hope so. I really hope so." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. The construction took longer than expected. It always does, but Emma didn't mind. She was at the site every single day, watching the transformation happen. Walls went up. Equipment was installed. The old warehouse slowly became something new, something beautiful. They painted the main garage area a bright blue, Emma's father's favorite color. They hung up old photos of William at his original shop, working on cars, laughing with customers, doing what he loved. And above the main entrance, they installed a big sign with letters you could see from a block away. "Richardson's Second Chances," where everyone gets a fresh start, but the building was only part of it. The real work was building the program. Emma partnered with local organizations that worked with at-risk youth. She connected with veteran support groups. She reached out to community colleges about creating apprenticeship opportunities. She talked to every mechanic she could find about what skills young people would need to succeed in the industry. And slowly, the applications started coming in. The first class of Richardson's Second Chances would have 12 students. 12 young people who, for various reasons, had been written off by society. Kids who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Veterans who couldn't find work because they had PTSD or gaps in their resumes. Single parents who needed flexible training that wouldn't conflict with childcare. Emma read every single application personally. Each one broke her heart and filled it with hope at the same time. There was Noah, 19-year-old who'd spent his entire childhood bouncing between foster homes. He'd never had anyone believe in him, never had anyone tell him he could be something. His application essay was only 2 sentences long. "I don't know if I'm good enough for this, but I want to try." There was Sophia, a 26-year-old single mom with a 4-year-old daughter. Her husband had left her when the baby was born, just disappeared one day and never came back. She'd been working to minimum wage jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, but she knew there had to be something better. "I want my daughter to see that her mom didn't give up," she wrote. "I want her to be proud of me." There was Michael, a 32-year-old veteran who'd served 3 tours overseas. He'd come home with injuries you couldn't see, the kind that made it hard to sleep, hard to be in crowds, hard to feel normal. He'd been turned down from job after job because employers didn't want to deal with his issues. His application said simply, "I just want a chance to be useful." Again, every single one of them got accepted. The grand opening of Richardson's Second Chances was on a Saturday. In April, exactly 1 year after. Emma had walked into First Heritage Mutual and discovered her father's secret. Emma couldn't believe how many people showed up. There were reporters from local news stations, city council members, representatives from the organizations Emma had partnered with, neighbors from the community who remembered William from the old days, and of course, the 12 students who would make up the first class. Olivia had organized everything perfectly. There was a ribbon-cutting ceremony out front, a tour of the facilities, a catered lunch for all the guests. It was, by every measure, a huge success, but the moment that Emma would remember forever happened. After most of the guests had left, she was in the main garage, straightening up some tools when she felt someone tap her on the shoulder. She turned around to see Noah, the 19-year-old foster kid, standing there looking nervous. "Hey, Noah," Emma said warmly. "What's up? Everything okay?" Noah shuffled his feet, not quite meeting her eyes. "Yeah, I just ... I wanted to say something, too. Before the program starts. Course. What is it?" Noah took a deep breath. "Nobody's ever done anything like this for me, ever. My whole life, people have told me I was going to end up nowhere, that I was a lost cause. And I started to believe them, you know? I started to think maybe they were right." Emma felt her heart squeezing. "But then I found out about this place," Noah continued, "and I read about you, about your dad, about what you're trying to do here. And for the first time in my life, I thought, maybe. Maybe I could be something. Maybe I'm not a lost cause after all." He finally looked up, and Emma saw that his eyes were wet with tears.
Her father's auto shop, the one he'd run for decades, had closed down after he died. Emma hadn't been able to keep it going, and eventually, she'd had to sell the building. It had broken her heart at the time. But what if she could bring it back? Not the exact same shop that was gone, but something similar. Something that honored her father's legacy while also doing some good in the world. Emma started making plans. She researched locations in her father's old neighborhood. She talked to mechanics and business advisors. She started sketching out ideas for a shop that would not only fix cars but also train young people who needed a second chance. Kids aging out of foster care, veterans struggling to find work, people who just needed someone to believe in them. She was going to call it Richardson's Second Chances. But while Emma was busy building her new life, there was one more thing she needed to take care of: David. Now, Emma wasn't a vengeful person. She really wasn't. Her father had always taught her to be kind, to be fair, to take the high road whenever possible. But there's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. And Emma was done being a doormat. See, during the divorce, David had hidden assets. He'd lied to the court about his income. He'd manipulated the proceedings to make sure Emma walked away with almost nothing while he kept everything. And now Emma had the resources to prove it. She hired a real lawyer this time. Good one. The kind of lawyer who charges $500 an hour and earns every penny. His name was Michael, and he looked like someone you definitely didn't want to mess with. "Here's what we're gonna do," Michael explained during their first meeting. "We're gonna reopen the divorce case. We're gonna subpoena all of David's financial records. And we're gonna prove that he committed fraud. Not only will you get back everything you're owed, but he could face criminal charges." Emma nodded slowly. "I don't want to ruin his life. I just want what's fair." Michael raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect, Emma, this man tried to leave you homeless. He lied under oath. He took advantage of the system to hurt you. Fair isn't enough. He needs to face consequences." Emma thought about it. She thought about all those nights crying herself to sleep on Olivia's couch. She thought about counting pennies to afford ramen noodles. She thought about the way David had looked at her when he told her she wasn't what she used to be. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's do it." The legal process took a few months, but when it was over, the results were devastating. For David. Turns out, David hadn't just hidden assets from Emma. He'd been hiding them from the IRS too. Tax evasion. Money laundering through his company. A whole web of financial crimes that unraveled the moment someone started pulling at the threads. David lost everything. His job, his reputation, his fancy house with the 3-car garage. Even his new girlfriend, the blonde that Olivia had seen him with at the restaurant, dumped him the moment she realized the money was gone. Last Emma heard, he was facing federal charges and looking at serious prison time. Emma didn't celebrate. That wasn't who she was. But she did feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Justice. 6 months after Emma discovered her father's secret fortune, she stood in front of a building on the south side of Chicago with tears in her eyes. But these weren't sad tears. Not even close. These were the happiest tears she'd ever cried. The building in front of her was nothing fancy. It was an old warehouse that had been abandoned for years. Graffiti on the walls, weeds growing through the cracks in the parking lot, windows so dirty you couldn't see through them. Most people would have looked at it and seen a lost cause. But Emma saw possibility. This was going to be Richardson's second chances. It had taken months of planning, hundreds of meetings, and more paperwork than Emma ever thought possible. But finally it was happening. The construction crews were arriving next week. The renovation plans were approved. The non-profit paperwork was filed. Her father's dream, her dream, was becoming reality. "You okay, boss?" Emma turned to see Olivia walking up behind her, 2 coffees in hand. Over the past few months, Olivia had become more than just Emma's best friend. She'd become her business partner. When Emma first told her about the idea for the auto shop and training program, Olivia had quit her job on the spot. "Are you crazy?" Emma had said. "You can't just quit your job." "Watch me," Olivia had replied. "You're gonna need someone to handle the business side of things while you're out there changing lives. And besides, I've always wanted to do something that actually mattered. This is my chance too." Now here they were, standing in front of their future. "I'm better than okay," Emma said, taking one of the coffees. I don't even have words for what I'm feeling right now." Olivia smiled and linked her arm through Emma's. "Your dad would be so proud, you know. So incredibly proud." Emma nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I hope so. I really hope so." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. The construction took longer than expected. It always does. But Emma didn't mind. She was at the site every single day, watching the transformation happen. Walls went up. Equipment was installed. The old warehouse slowly became something new, something beautiful. They painted the main garage area a bright blue, Emma's father's favorite color. They hung up old photos of William at his original shop, working on cars, laughing with customers, doing what he loved. And above the main entrance, they installed a big sign with letters you could see from a block away. "Richardson's Second Chances," where everyone gets a fresh start. But the building was only part of it. The real work was building the program. Emma partnered with local organizations that worked with at-risk youth. She connected with veteran support groups. She reached out to community colleges about creating apprenticeship opportunities. She talked to every mechanic she could find about what skills young people would need to succeed in the industry. And slowly, the applications started coming in. The first class of Richardson's Second Chances would have 12 students. 12 young people who, for various reasons, had been written off by society. Kids who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Veterans who couldn't find work because they had PTSD or gaps in their resumes. Single parents who needed flexible training that wouldn't conflict with childcare. Emma read every single application personally. Each one broke her heart and filled it with hope at the same time. There was Noah, a 19-year-old who'd spent his entire childhood bouncing between foster homes. He'd never had anyone believe in him, never had anyone tell him he could be something. His application essay was only 2 sentences long. "I don't know if I'm good enough for this, but I want to try." There was Sophia, a 26-year-old single mom with a 4-year-old daughter. Her husband had left her when the baby was born. Just disappeared one day and never came back. She'd been working 2 minimum wage jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, but she knew there had to be something better. "I want my daughter to see that her mom didn't give up," she wrote. I want her to be proud of me. There was Michael, a 32-year-old veteran who'd served 3 tours overseas. He'd come home with injuries you couldn't see. The kind that made it hard to sleep, hard to be in crowds, hard to feel normal. He'd been turned down from job after job because employers didn't want to deal with his issues. His application said simply, "I just want a chance to be useful again." Every single one of them got accepted. The grand opening of Richardson's Second Chances was on a Saturday in April. Exactly 1 year after Emma had walked into First Heritage Mutual and discovered her father's secret. Emma couldn't believe how many people showed up. There were reporters from local news stations, city council members, representatives from the organizations Emma had partnered with, neighbors from the community who remembered William from the old days, and of course the 12 students who would make up the first class. Olivia had organized everything perfectly. There was a ribbon-cutting ceremony out front, a tour of the facilities, a catered lunch for all the guests. It was by every measure a huge success. But the moment that Emma would remember forever happened after most of the guests had left. She was in the main garage, straightening up some tools, when she felt someone tap her on the shoulder. She turned around to see Noah, the 19-year-old foster kid, standing there looking nervous. "Hey Noah," Emma said warmly. "What's up? Everything okay?" Noah shuffled his feet, not quite meeting her eyes. "Yeah, I wanted to say something to you before the program starts." "Of course. What is it?" Noah took a deep breath. "Nobody's ever done anything like this for me. Ever. My whole life people have told me I was gonna end up nowhere. That I was a lost cause. And I started to believe them, you know? I started to think maybe they were right." Emma felt her heart squeezing. "But then I found out about this place," Noah continued. "And I read about you. About your dad. About what you're trying to do here. And for the first time in my life I thought, maybe I could be something. Maybe I'm not a lost cause after all." He finally looked up, and Emma saw that his eyes were wet with tears. "So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for believing in people like me. Even when nobody else does." Emma couldn't help it. She pulled Noah into a hug right there in the garage. He stiffened at first, probably not used to physical affection, but then he hugged her back. "Noah," she said softly, "you were never a lost cause. Not for 1 second. And I'm gonna make sure you know that every single day you're here." That night, after everyone had finally gone home, Emma sat alone in the garage. The lights were dim, the building was quiet, and for the first time all day, she had a moment to herself. She pulled out her father's letter, the one she now carried with her everywhere, folded carefully in her wallet, and read it again. She'd read it probably 100 times by now, but it never got old. It never stopped making her feel like her dad was right there with her. "I did it, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "I really did it." She could almost hear his voice in her head. "I knew you would, Emma Bear. I always knew." The first year of Richardson's Second Chances exceeded everyone's expectations. Of the 12 students in the first class, 11 completed the program. The 12th, a young woman named Ava who'd been struggling with addiction, had to drop out halfway through. But even that wasn't the end of her story. Emma personally helped her get into a treatment program, and 6 months later Ava reapplied. She was accepted into the second class and became one of the program's biggest success stories. Noah, the foster kid who'd never had anyone believe in him, turned out to be a natural mechanic. He had a gift for diagnosing problems that even experienced mechanics couldn't figure out. By the end of the program, he had 3 job offers from local shops. He took a position at a high-end garage downtown, where he now makes more money than he ever dreamed possible. Sophia, the single mom, graduated at the top of her class. She now runs her own mobile mechanic service, going to customers' homes and offices to fix their cars. Her daughter, now 5 years old, tells everyone she meets that her mommy is a car doctor. Michael, the veteran, found something at Richardson's that he hadn't found anywhere else: a community. He bonded with the other students, discovered a talent for teaching, and eventually became one of the program's instructors. He still struggles sometimes. The invisible wounds don't just go away. But now he has a support system. Now he has people who understand. Word spread about what Emma was doing. Other cities started reaching out, wanting to know how they could create similar programs. Emma found herself giving speeches at conferences, doing interviews on podcasts, even testifying before a congressional committee about workforce development. But through it all, she stayed grounded. She never forgot where she came from. She never forgot those months of crying on Olivia's couch, wondering how she was going to survive. She never forgot what it felt like to be thrown away like she was nothing. That's what made her so good at what she did. She understood. She'd been there. About 2 years after the grand opening, Emma got an unexpected phone call. She was in her office at Richardson's, going over applications for the next class, when her assistant buzzed her. "Emma, there's someone on line 2 for you. Says his name is James Mitchell. From First Heritage Mutual." Emma smiled. She'd stayed in touch with James, the bank manager who'd first shown her the account. He'd become something of a mentor to her, helping her navigate the world of wealth management and nonprofit finance. "Put him through," she said. "Emma, how are you?" James's warm voice came through the line. "I'm great, James. Busy as always, but great. What's up?" "Well, I have some news. The kind of news I wanted to deliver personally." Emma leaned back in her chair. "Good news or bad news?" "Very good news. You remember how we set up that investment fund with a portion of your father's money? The one focused on long-term growth." "Of course. Well, the market's been very kind to us. Between the investment returns and the continued growth of the original account, I wanted to let you know that your total assets have now exceeded $100 million. Emma nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" James laughed. "I had a feeling you'd react that way. But it's true. Congratulations, Emma. You're now officially worth 9 figures. Emma sat there in stunned silence. $100 million. It didn't even seem real. "Emma, you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. And to tell you that your father's original investment strategy, the one he set up over 60 years ago, is still working. The tree he planted is still growing." After she hung up the phone, Emma sat quietly for a long time. $100 million. She could do anything with that money. Buy a mansion. Travel the world. Never work another day in her life. But that's not what she wanted. She thought about her father. About the man who'd had $47 million but still drove a beat-up truck. Who still clipped coupons. Who still told Emma they couldn't afford the fancy ice cream. He hadn't been cheap. He'd been wise. He understood that money was just a tool. What mattered was what you did with it. Emma picked up the phone and dialed Olivia's extension. "Hey boss, what's up?" "Liv, can you come to my office? I have an idea." 10 minutes later, Olivia was sitting across from Emma, her eyes wide as Emma explained what she wanted to do. "You want to open more locations?" Olivia asked. "Like franchise Richardson's Second Chances?" "Not franchise, expand. I want to open locations in other cities. Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia. Cities where manufacturing has declined, where people have been left behind. I want to take what we've built here and multiply it." Olivia nodded slowly. That's huge, Emma. We're talking about a massive operation. Staff, facilities, partnerships, funding." "I know. And I know we can't do it alone. We'll need to bring in more people, build a real organization. But Liv, we have the resources now. We have the model. We've proven that this works. Why wouldn't we try to help as many people as possible?" Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then a slow smile spread across her face. "You know what? Let's do it. Let's go big." Over the next 3 years, Richardson's Second Chances expanded to 7 cities across the country. Each location was a little different, tailored to the specific needs of its community. The Detroit location focused on automotive manufacturing skills. The Philadelphia location partnered with local hospitals to train medical equipment technicians. The Cleveland location specialized in green energy technology. But they all shared the same core mission: giving people a second chance. Believing in people when nobody else would. Proving that everyone has value. The impact was staggering. By the 5th anniversary of the original Chicago location, Richardson's Second Chances had trained over 2,000 students. The graduation rate was 89%. The job placement rate was 94%. Former students had gone on to start their own businesses, buy homes, send their kids to college. They'd broken cycles of poverty that had lasted for generations. And it all started with one old bank card and a father who believed in his daughter. Emma was in Chicago for the 5th anniversary celebration when she got another surprise. The event was being held at the original location. The same warehouse that Emma had once stood in front of, trying to imagine what it could become. Now it was full of people. Current students, alumni, staff members, community partners, supporters from all over the country. Olivia had put together an incredible program. There were speeches from graduates about how the program had changed their lives. There was a video presentation showing the impact across all 7 locations. There was even a message from the governor, congratulating Richardson's Second Chances on its success. But the last item on the program was a surprise. Even to Emma. "And now," Olivia announced from the podium, "I'd like to invite someone very special up to the stage. Someone who traveled a long way to be here tonight." Emma looked around, confused. Who was Olivia talking about? Then she saw him. Walking through the crowd, looking older than she remembered but still instantly recognizable, was James Mitchell from First Heritage Mutual. But he wasn't alone. Next to him was an elderly woman Emma had never seen before. She was small and frail, using a walker to make her way slowly toward the stage. Her white hair was neatly styled, and despite her age, there was a sharpness in her eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. James helped the woman up the stairs to the stage. Emma stood there, completely bewildered, as Olivia handed the microphone to James. "Good evening, everyone," James said. "For those who don't know me, my name is James Mitchell, and I've had the privilege of knowing Emma Richardson for the past 5 years. I was there the day she discovered her father's gift, and I've watched her do extraordinary things with it ever since." The crowd applauded warmly. "But tonight I wanted to introduce you to someone who has an even longer connection to this story. This is Margaret Sullivan. She's 91 years old, and she was my predecessor at First Heritage Mutual. In fact, she was the banker who opened William Richardson's account back in 1962. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Margaret took the microphone with a surprisingly steady hand. "Hello, dear," she said, looking directly at Emma. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." Emma couldn't speak. She just stared at this woman who had known her father when he was just a teenager. "Your father came to see me when he was 18 years old," Margaret continued. "He was just a boy, really. But there was something about him. Something in his eyes. He told me he wanted to save money for his future family. For children he didn't even have yet. I thought he was crazy." The crowd laughed softly. "But he was serious. Dead serious. And every year, on the anniversary of opening that account, he would come back to the bank. Just to check on it. Just to make sure his tree was still growing." Margaret paused, her eyes glistening. "The last time I saw him was about 15 years ago. I was already retired by then, but he tracked me down. Came to my house with flowers and a card. He told me about you, Emma. Told me all about his daughter who was smart and kind and strong. And he said something that I've never forgotten." Emma leaned forward, desperate to hear every word. "He said, 'Margaret, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But my Emma, she's the one thing I got right. And one day she's gonna change the world. You watch.'" The tears were streaming down Emma's face now. She didn't even try to stop them. Margaret smiled. "I've been watching, dear. And he was right. You're changing the world. And I know. I know without a shadow of a doubt that your father is watching too. Emma stood on that stage, tears streaming down her face, as the crowd erupted into applause. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. All she could do was stare at this 91-year-old woman who had just delivered a message from her father across the span of decades. Margaret opened her arms, and Emma stepped into them without hesitation. They hugged right there on the stage, two strangers connected by one extraordinary man and his extraordinary love. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "Thank you for telling me that." Margaret pulled back and cupped Emma's face in her wrinkled hands. "No, dear. Thank you. Thank you for proving him right." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and happy tears. But later that night, after all the guests had gone home and the building was quiet again, Emma found herself alone in the garage. Just like she'd been 5 years ago, on the night of the grand opening. She sat on an old metal stool, surrounded by the tools and equipment that had helped transform so many lives. The walls were covered with photos now. Not just of her father, but of graduates. Hundreds of faces. Hundreds of stories. Hundreds of second chances. Emma pulled out her father's letter one more time. The paper was worn soft from handling, the creases so deep they'd almost become tears. But she could still read every word. "Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you, sweetheart. Just be happy." And for the first time in her life, Emma could honestly say that she was. Not because of the money. Not because of the recognition. Not because of any of the external things that people usually chase. She was happy because she'd found her purpose. She was happy because she'd honored her father's legacy. She was happy because she'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her, being thrown away by a man who never deserved her, and turned it into the best thing she'd ever done. 3 months after the anniversary celebration, Emma got a call from Noah. "Emma, you gotta come down to the shop. There's something I need to show you." Emma drove over, wondering what could be so urgent. When she arrived, she found Noah waiting outside with the biggest grin she'd ever seen on his face. "What's going on?" she asked. Noah didn't answer. He just led her inside the high-end garage where he worked. All his co-workers were there, standing around something covered with a big blue tarp. "Noah, what is this?" "So, you know how you told me about your dad's old truck? The one he left you that barely ran anymore?" Emma nodded slowly. She'd mentioned it once, years ago. She couldn't believe Noah remembered. "Well, I tracked it down. Took me almost a year. It had been sold to a junkyard, but they hadn't crushed it yet. So I bought it. And me and the guys here. We've been working on it in our spare time." He grabbed the corner of the tarp. "We restored it. Completely. Every part original or as close as we could get. It runs like a dream now." He pulled off the tarp. And there it was. Her father's old pickup truck. The same one she'd learned to drive in. The same one that had sat in their driveway her whole childhood. Except now it gleamed like it had just rolled off the factory floor. Emma burst into tears. "Noah, I can't." Noah's eyes were wet too. "You gave me a second chance, Emma. You gave all of us a second chance. This was the only way I could think of to say thank you." Emma ran her hand along the truck's hood, overwhelmed with memories. She could almost see her father sitting in the driver's seat, laughing at one of his own corny jokes. She could almost smell the coffee he always kept in the cup holder. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's absolutely perfect." She drove that truck home that night. And every time she got behind the wheel after that, she felt like her father was right there with her. 10 years after Emma discovered her father's secret fortune, Richardson's Second Chances had expanded to 23 cities across the country. The organization had trained over 15,000 students. Former graduates had started over 200 small businesses. The ripple effects were impossible to calculate. And Emma had found something she never expected. His name was Liam. He was a high school shop teacher who had started volunteering at the Chicago location on weekends. He was kind and funny and patient, and he looked at Emma like she was the most amazing person he'd ever met. They got married on a Saturday afternoon in the garage of the original Richardson's Second Chances location. The same garage where Emma had hugged Noah all those years ago. The same garage where she'd sat alone reading her father's letter. Olivia was her maid of honor. Noah gave a toast that made everyone cry. And when Emma and Liam drove away from the reception, they did it in her father's restored pickup truck, tin cans rattling behind them and a "Just Married" sign painted on the back window. 2 years later, Emma gave birth to a baby boy. She named him William. Little William had his grandfather's eyes. Bright and curious, always looking for something to figure out. Emma would hold him in the rocking chair by the window and tell him stories about the grandfather he'd never meet. About the mechanic with grease-stained hands who planted a tree 60 years before it would bloom. "Your grandpa loved you before you were even born," she would whisper. "He loved all of us. And everything good in our lives. Everything started with him." Sometimes, late at night, Emma would stand in the doorway of William's nursery and just watch him sleep. And in those quiet moments, she would think about everything that had happened. The divorce. The betrayal. The moment she'd walked into that bank with nothing but an old card and a desperate hope. If David hadn't thrown her out, she never would have found the card. If she'd never found the card, she never would have discovered her father's gift. And if she'd never discovered her father's gift, none of this would exist. Not Richardson's second chances. Not the thousands of lives that had been transformed. Not her beautiful son sleeping peacefully in his crib. The worst day of her life had led to the best days of her life. And Emma finally understood what her father had meant all along. The storm always passes. The sun always comes back out. And sometimes, the rain is exactly what you needed to help your garden grow. Emma smiled, wiped a happy tear from her cheek, and whispered into the darkness, "Thanks, Dad, for everything." And somewhere, somehow, she knew he heard her. Then,